Are you just a dream, Merlin?
A dream to some.
A nightmare to others!
Today we are taking a look at Arthur of Albion, a 2008 book written by John Matthews and illustrated by Pavel Tatarnikov, retelling the best-known tales of Arthurian legend. The book is wonderfully illustrated by Pavel Tatarnikov, a prolific artist from Belarus, primarily known for depictions of medieval history and mythology. Unfortunately, this is one of the few books he worked on that were published in English, but even in this book alone there's plenty to see. His style is quite well suited for the more fantastical side of Arthurian literature, blending authentic representation of medieval life and art, although I'm sure inspired by many different periods, with a dreamlike, ethereal quality that I always associate with these stories. Almost every spread is richly illustrated down to the unique decorated initials at the start of each tale. The whole thing feels outside of history, as if it's taking place in a mythical fairy space between reality and imagination, including the titular name of Albion, which is simply an alternative and rarely used name for Great Britain. But my guess it's meant to put some distance between the history and mythology of King Arthur, and by using a more exotic name place him in the territory of fantasy, which is also shown in the choice of stories in the book and the way they are told. It's quite clear that Matthews had a preference for the more fantastical or even spiritual aspects of the legend, skipping over a lot of the more mundane stories of life in the court, social and romantic intrigue, warfare and politics, material that often dominates actual Arthurian literature, where magic, miracles, monsters are seen sporadically in comparison. I am quite happy with this choice personally, and this collection solves a lot of the issues I had in the past when I tried getting into the subject. This more mythological direction was also surprising when you take into account that the writer is a proponent of a not-so-popular hypothesis that suggests the possibility of a Roman military commander, Lucius Artorius Castus, being the inspiration for the figure of Arthur in medieval European literature, bringing the legend down into the domain of history, reflected also in the 2004 film titled King Arthur, on which Matthews served as historical consultant. I find this theory quite boring personally, and I'm glad that he left his thoughts on the subject at the door and stuck to the established narrative we know from literature. John Matthews is often described as a historian or a scholar, but I think those designations might simply refer to his area of interest and not any formal academic credentials. I'm not sure. Which is only important to me due to my lack of familiarity with the sources for these contemporary retellings, so I can't really recognize which parts the author has added or changed. Arthurian literature has always had a tradition of iteration, constantly shifting narratives, origins of characters and their personalities, and generally little regard for consistency, so it wouldn't surprise me if Matthews, considering himself as continuing this tradition, may have changed up certain parts. Some commentary regarding this would be helpful, but I understand it's not that kind of book. As an introduction to Arthurian legend, it's quite successful, concise and to the point, but it never feels dull or shallow. This book is also nicely accompanied by a more recent release from John Matthews called The Great Book of King Arthur and His Knights of the Round Table, which contains a lot of the lesser-known stories, wonderfully illustrated by the frequent Tolkien illustrator John Howe. I will present it here sometime in the future, so now you have something else you can look forward to. I believe this hardcover edition may be sold out, although it's readily available on the second-hand market and it is quite affordable. There is a smaller paperback version available currently, but I feel like this quality and quantity of artwork deserves a larger format. The smaller version also has different proportions, so I wonder if there was any cropping of illustrations, I'm not sure. The publisher, Barefoot Books, also made a couple other similar books in the same format, using different illustrators, but I felt none of them are as attractive as this one. Well, that would be all for now. Thank you for watching and goodbye.